I thought I found the love of my life, the one who made my world finally make sense. Her smile, her touch, her presence, everything felt like fate. But fate had a cruel secret. The girl I gave my heart to was my stepsister, and I didn't even know. They say a single moment can change an entire lifetime. For me, that moment came wrapped in something deceptively simple, her smile. It wasn't the kind of smile you casually notice. No, this one had weight. It carried warmth, it carried mystery, and it carried gravity. My eyes caught hers in the middle of chaos, people rushing by, voices colliding into noise. And yet, everything else blurred, as if the world vanished just long enough for destiny to arrive. The truth is, I wasn't looking for love. I wasn't even looking for anything close to it. By then, my heart had already learned the language of silence, of growing walls, of pretending that alone was easier. I had convinced myself that attachment was weakness, that love was a gamble I couldn't afford to play again. But the moment she entered my life, all those walls I had built for years began to show cracks. Her name, it sounded like poetry when it rolled off my tongue. But the first time I said it, I barely whispered, afraid it might break the spell. She laughed, as if she found joy in the smallest of things. And I wondered how someone could carry so much light without burning themselves out. She was different, or maybe she was exactly what I had been starving for, a reminder that life could feel alive again. The days that followed felt like pieces of fate, stitching themselves into a tapestry I didn't know was missing. Long conversations under the dimmest streetlights, hushed confessions at ungodly hours of the night, careless laughter spilling into silence where even quiet felt safe. I had been guarded, careful, cynical, but with her I let myself forget caution. I let myself believe. Love has a strange way of painting over scars. Her presence convinced me that all my past losses, all the betrayals, all the heartbreaks had existed only to prepare me for this. I told myself, this is eternal. The way she leaned into me when the world felt heavy, the way she listened, as if every word I spoke deserved a place inside her heart, the way her eyes searched mine, and for the first time I didn't want to look away. That's how love began for me, quietly, beautifully, mercilessly. Because love, no matter how tender it feels at the start, carries within it the seed of destruction. But I didn't know that yet. Not then. Back then, all I knew was that I wanted to spend lifetimes in her orbit. And in those first sparks, I believed I had finally found the person who would never let me burn alone again. They say love is blind, but I think it's more than that. Love doesn't just blind you, it chooses where you look. It whispers, focus here on the light, while quietly covering your eyes from the shadows forming behind it. At first, I didn't notice them, or maybe I refused to. The days with her were still golden. We still laughed like children who had stolen time itself. We still spoke of dreams, of travels we never took, of futures we hadn't yet earned. She would hold my hand as if it belonged to her alone, and I believed that no power could break us apart. But I started to see little things. The first time it happened, it was simple. A message she didn't want me to see. Her gaze flickered. Her phone turned over just a second too fast. I told myself, privacy, it's her right. I brushed it aside. Then, there were the unanswered calls, the sudden disappearances, the half smiles she would give me whenever I asked, where were you? Half smiles that whispered there was more to the story, but lips that never gave me the whole truth. Voice softens, almost a sigh. The thing about love is, you excuse it. You make stories in your head to cover their silence. You tell yourself, she was busy, she was tired, she forgot. You build castles out of excuses because the heart can't bear the thought of cracks in the foundation. And I was building those castles every day. Still, there were nights that haunted me. Nights when her eyes seemed distant, when I felt her body next to mine, but her soul far away. Nights when she kissed me, but her lips carried a hollowness I pretended not to taste. I remember one evening, we were watching the rain fall against the glass, and she rested her head on my shoulder. To anyone else, it might have looked perfect. A picture straight out of a love story, but I could feel it. The quiet between us wasn't peace anymore. It was distance. I should have asked. I should have pushed, but instead I smiled and held her tighter, as if my arms could silence whatever secret weighed her down. That was the first time I truly felt it. The shadows. Not loud, not obvious, just whispers at the corner of love. Whispers I was too afraid to listen to. There are moments in life that split you into two people, the one you were before and the one you become after. For me, that cut came in the shape of betrayal. I remember the night it happened. Nothing dramatic. No storm outside. No cinematic thunder. Just silence. It's funny, isn't it? How the most ordinary nights can hide the weight of a moment that will scar you forever. She had left her phone on the table, unlocked, careless, almost as if fate itself had pushed me toward it. And something inside me, a voice I had been suppressing for months, whispered, look, I wish I hadn't. I wish I'd never touched that phone. But I did, and there it was. Her words to someone who wasn't me. Not just words. Love, affection, promises. The same poetry she once whispered to me was now bleeding into someone else's hands. The earth didn't spin the same in that moment. My chest caved in, breath caught in my throat, as if air itself refused to touch me. My shaking hands scrolled through lie after lie, conversation after conversation until I was hollow. Voice breaking, heavy pause. She wasn't mine. She never had been. All those nights I thought she was tired. She was busy. She was distant. She was his. half smiles, the excuses, the silences. They weren't coincidences. They were disguises. And me? I was the fool who painted red flags into constellations of hope. The door opened that night, and she walked in, her smile carrying the same charm it had the first day we met. And for a second, I almost believed it again. Almost. I asked her calmly at first, my voice trembling between rage and desperation. Who is he? She froze. And in that silence, I knew everything. Silence, sometimes louder than truth, was my final confirmation. Her eyes didn't beg for forgiveness. They didn't explain. They didn't even defend. She just looked at me, almost pitying, almost sorry, almost relieved that the lie had finally burned itself into daylight. That was the moment love died inside me. Not instantly, no. Love doesn't die in an explosion. It dies slowly, painfully, bleeding out in every heartbeat until you're left with nothing but rage. I tasted betrayal for the first time that night. And let me tell you, it's bitter. So bitter, it scars the tongue forever. I used to think betrayal came in a single strike, like a dagger straight into the heart. But I was wrong. True betrayal isn't a stab. It's a theater. A performance rehearsed over days, weeks, months, until you start to realize you weren't in love with her at all. You were in love with the mask she wore. After that night, my eyes changed. Once you see through a lie, it's impossible to unsee it. And suddenly, all her little things began unraveling into one undeniable truth. The late replies, the sudden trips with friends, the familiar perfume in her hair that sometimes wasn't hers, the way she held me but her pulse no longer raced against mine. My heart wanted to scream, how long has this been happening? Who were you with last night while I was waiting here believing you loved me? The more I uncovered, the more suffocating it became. Because betrayal is never just in the present, it poisons the past too. Every memory we had built, every smile, every kiss, was suddenly tainted. Voice lowers, cold and reflective. I began replaying everything. The first time she said she loved me. The nights she swore she couldn't imagine life without me. The promises of forever. Were they all scripted? Did she mean any of it? Or was it all part of a performance I had been too blinded to question? Her mask was flawless. She had worn it so well that it had fooled even me, a man who prided himself on reading people. But here's the thing about masks. They slip. And once they do, you see not who they were pretending to be, but who they truly are. One evening, I confronted her again. Not with fire, not with rage, just quiet questions threaded in ice. Her answers were half-truths, fragments, but fragments are enough when you already know the whole picture. That night, her mask finally broke. And the woman in front of me? She wasn't the woman I fell in love with. She was a stranger. A stranger I had handed my soul to. A stranger who had taken it, toyed with it, and left it bleeding for someone else's amusement. That's when it hit me. I hadn't just been betrayed. I had been deceived, played, and deception cuts deeper than betrayal. Because betrayal says, I lied to you. But deception says, I made you live inside the lie. And you thanked me for it? They say every man has a limit. A place where his strength collapses into weakness, where his pride bleeds into humiliation, where the heart finally admits it can't take one more wound. I didn't believe that applied to me. I thought I was stronger, colder, immune. But that night I discovered my limit. And it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Too quiet. After her mask slipped, after I caught glimpses of the lies curling like smoke around her words, I waited. I waited for her to confess, to explain, to cry and beg. I wanted her to show me even a fraction of the devastation I carried inside. But she didn't. She simply carried on, like nothing had changed, as if my brokenness was nothing more than background noise, as if the man in front of her was no longer worth the truth. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just losing her. I was losing myself. The man who once loved her with unshakable certainty was gone. In his place stood a stranger. Tired eyes, bitter mouth, restless hands that didn't know if they wanted to caress her face or strangle the memories of it. I would look at my reflection and wonder who the hell was staring back. It's strange how betrayal rewires you. At first, it whispers. It makes you doubt, makes you second guess. But once truth comes crashing in, it screams. It invades every breath, every step, every thought. Suddenly, nothing is pure. Every laugh feels counterfeit. Every memory feels poisoned. I remember one night sitting alone in the dark. No lights, no sound, just me in the shadows. My hands rested in my lap, trembling, not from weakness, but from the storm I was holding inside. I stared at them for what felt like hours. These were the same hands that once held her gently, that traced her face as though she was carved from something holy. These were the same hands that pulled her close when the world felt unbearable. And now they shook with rage. They longed to destroy every photograph, every gift, every relic of her existence in my life. That's what betrayal does. It splits you into two people, the one who still aches for the love that used to exist, and the one who burns for revenge against the lie you've been forced to live inside. I wanted to hate her. God, I tried. But there were moments, little moments, that haunted me. The way her hair would fall into her eyes and she'd laugh when I brushed it aside. The way she'd reach for my hand without thinking, as if my skin was the only home she needed. Those memories clung to me like ghosts, whispering that maybe, just maybe, some part of it had been real. And that's the cruelest part. When when you don't know which pieces of love were genuine and which were lies. I should have left. I should have walked away and never looked back. Any sane man would have. But love isn't sane. Love is a fever. It makes you sweat and shake. It blinds you, it poisons you, and still you cling to it because you've convinced yourself that pain is better than emptiness. So I stayed. I stayed in the house built on cracks, telling myself the walls wouldn't fall. I stayed in the arms of the woman who had already given her soul to another. I stayed because I was terrified of silence, terrified of losing the illusion, even if I knew the illusion was killing me. But something inside me shifted. It didn't happen all at once. It was slow, like water dripping through stone, carving something new. At first it was just exhaustion, the kind that weighs on your bones, makes every smile feel heavy, every word taste bitter. Then it became anger, not the explosive kind, but the kind that simmers, coils, waits. Anger that doesn't burn out, but burns in. And finally, it became resolve. That was the breaking point. Not the night I found her messages, not the night her silence confessed the truth, but the night I realized I could no longer be the fool in her play. She wanted to wear her mask? Fine. I would wear one too. She wanted to play her game? Good. I would learn the rules. And then I would break them. The man who cried for her died that night. The man who begged for her love was buried in silence. And in his place, something new began to awaken. Not broken, not desperate, but dangerous. Because love may blind you, betrayal may wound you. But when both collide, they forge something sharper. And that night, in the stillness of my breaking, I felt it. The birth of a new self. One she would never see coming. They say anger is dangerous, but betrayal is worse. Because betrayal doesn't just ignite anger. It plants a seed. And from that seed, vengeance grows. At first, it was just a thought. A fleeting idea that danced in the corner of my mind like smoke. What if she felt what I felt? What if she tasted the same poison she fed me? What if her empire of lies collapsed, not in secret, but in the very spotlight she craved? That thought became an ember. The ember became a flame. And soon, the flame became fire. I stopped asking why she betrayed me. The answer didn't matter anymore. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was greed. Maybe it was just her nature. None of it changed what she did, or what it made of me. What mattered now wasn't the past. It was balance, justice. And so I learned. I studied her. Not as a lover studies his beloved, but as a predator studies his prey. I watched the way she moved, the way she lied, the way she spun her stories. I memorized the patterns, the inconsistencies, the cracks she thought I was too blind to see. If she had taught me anything, it was how to wear a mask. So I put one on. A mask of calm, a mask of forgiveness, a mask that smiled while secretly sharpening the blade of truth. From the outside, I was the same man, still laughing at her jokes, still holding her hand in public, still whispering I love you. When the world went quiet, she thought I was weak, thought I was still chained to her spell. That was her mistake, because inside I was building. Some nights I lay awake not drowning in heartbreak, but drafting strategy. I replayed her lies in my mind, not to mourn them, but to weaponize them. I imagined the moment her mask would finally shatter, the moment the world would see what I saw. That vision became my anchor, my fuel, my promise. This wasn't about love anymore. This wasn't even about heartbreak. This was about war. And in war, there are no rules, only survival, only victory. So I sharpened my silence into a blade. I turned my pain into fire. And while she danced carelessly in her illusions, I was already weaving the web that would strangle them. That was the birth of vengeance. The night I stopped bleeding. The night I stopped breaking. The night I began hunting. The funny thing about masks is, once you've seen how they're worn, you learn how to wear one yourself. And so I became something new. Not the man who cried for her. Not the man who begged for her love. I became the man who smiled, while secretly calculating her downfall. At first I let things feel normal. I didn't confront her again. I laughed when she laughed. I played the role of the forgiving lover still clinging to scraps of affection. She thought she still had me under her spell. That was my greatest advantage. Because what's more dangerous than a betrayed heart? A betrayed heart pretending to still be in love. She didn't know I watched everything more carefully now. The phone she thought I no longer checked. My eyes scanned it like a surgeon dissecting flesh. The friends she thought were on her side, I began talking to them, listening, collecting. Like a spider weaving quietly, patiently. I was building a web stronger than hers. I discovered names, dates, places. I uncovered her patterns, her lies layered upon lies, and I stored them like weapons for a war she didn't even know had already begun. There's a thrill in silent revenge. Every time she lied to my face, I would nod, smile, even kiss her forehead as though I still believed her. And inside, every lie she fed me strengthened the storm I was crafting behind my calm eyes. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was playing moves ahead. Every fake laugh, every staged silence, every affectionate word I returned to her, all of it was a chessboard I had laid beneath her feet. And piece by piece, she was stepping exactly where I wanted her to. I wasn't planning to destroy her with rage. Rage is messy, too obvious. I wanted her to destroy herself, with her own lies. All I needed was patience, and patience had become my closest ally. Nights used to be when I lay broken and sleepless. Now, they belong to strategy. I moved silently, talking to people she never thought I'd reach, uncovering secrets she never thought I'd find. I began turning her own deceit inward. Soon, the mask she wore so perfectly would collapse under the weight of her own performance, and when that happened, I'd be standing right there, pulling the final string. Revenge is not one grand gesture. It's a series of whispers that eventually become a scream. It's not a sword you swing once. It's a web you weave quietly, until the prey doesn't realize they're tangled, until it's far, far too late. By this time, I had already gathered enough pieces of her deceit to craft an empire of truth. Dates, messages, witnesses, proof that her love was nothing more than an illusion. Each fragment, small on its own, but powerful when placed together. I wasn't rushing. No, patience was my greatest weapon. The more time passed, the more comfortable she felt believing I was still blind, still foolish, still hers. She lied more carelessly now. She forgot the details, repeated the same excuses. Her stories began colliding with each other, and every time she stumbled, I was there, collecting, waiting. I never corrected her. I never questioned her. That was her mistake. She believed silence was submission, but my silence was the sound of the trap closing. Then one day I began pulling strings, subtle ones. I mentioned her name in conversations with people she trusted, planting tiny doubts where her lies couldn't survive. I showed small fragments of proof to those who still thought she was perfect. Never the full picture, just enough to make them wonder. And just like that, her kingdom of deceit began trembling. Not because I struck at it, but because I loosened just enough bricks for it to collapse on its own. I watched her unravel. Some days she was paranoid, checking her phone more often, accusing me of being distant. Some nights, she tried to love me harder, touch me softer, kiss me deeper, as if desperation could rebuild what deceit had destroyed. But it was already too late. By then, I wasn't her lover anymore. I was her shadow, her hunter, her silent judge, building the world that would soon cage her. The night it all came together, I remember looking at her across the table. She was laughing, sipping her drink, acting as though life was perfect. But I could see it behind her eyes. She was slipping, lies weighing heavier, secrets pressing harder, fear crackling just beneath her skin. And me? I only smiled, because I knew something she didn't. The game she thought she controlled was mine now. Every move she made was no longer hers. It belonged to me. The trap wasn't finished yet. No, the best part was still coming. But she was already dancing inside it. She just didn't know I was holding the strings. Revenge, I learned, is not a loud explosion. It's not rage spilling in one violent outburst. No. True revenge is quiet, methodical, precise. It is the art of making someone choke on the very lies they fed you, burning from the very fire they once lit in your chest. The night I chose to end it all, it wasn't random. I picked the perfect day, a gathering, people close to her, friends, family, the ones who still believed her stories, who still saw her as that perfect, flawless woman. She walked into the room glowing, as always, wearing her charm like a crown, her lies curled across her lips like jewels. Everyone greeted her with warmth, none the wiser to what I now carried in my hands. And I smiled, calm, silent, betraying nothing. All I did was press play. One video, one recording, one snapshot of the truth, her messages, her confessions, her double life spilled out into the room like poison in the air. Every carefully crafted mask she wore, shattered. Gasps, stares, disbelief, and her face drained of color, her lips parted, trembling, searching for words, excuses, denials, anything. But lies can only hold power when truth is absent. And I had brought the truth into the light. People she loved, people she lied to, people she never thought would turn against her were now staring, not at me, but at her. Questions flew like knives. How could you? All this time? Was anything you said real? And there she was, the woman who once held my soul in her hands, now choking on the same deceit she fed me. It was beautiful, cruel, perfect. She tried to run, tried to spin one last story, but it was over. Every thread she had spun so carefully unraveled in her own hands. And the best part? I didn't have to scream. I didn't have to fight. I didn't even have to move. Her destruction came from her own reflection. She looked at me then, eyes wide, a mix of fear and pleading, as if searching for the man who once adored her, the man who once would have saved her. But that man no longer existed. All she found was silence. And in that silence, she realized I had won. Revenge didn't heal me. It didn't stitch my wounds closed, but it did something far more powerful. It gave her the same taste of betrayal she had once forced down my throat. And as she stood there, exposed, stripped of every mask, broken before the very people she sought to impress, I finally felt it. Not peace, not joy, but balance. The night of her downfall should have been my ending. The trap had closed. The lies collapsed. The revenge delivered. Everyone saw her for who she truly was. And for a single moment, I thought that would be enough. But the truth is, revenge doesn't bring peace. It brings silence. And silence is louder than any war. In the days that followed, life felt strange. She was gone, stripped of her empire, her charm, her mask. Friends turned their backs. Family looked away. And though part of me had enjoyed watching it all burn, I realized something chilling. My war wasn't really against her anymore. It had always been against myself, the broken man, the fool, the one who once believed lies dressed as love. He was still inside me, whispering doubts, demanding answers. Revenge destroyed her mask, but now I had to destroy mine. The mask of anger, of coldness, of pretending I was fine while I carried an ocean of scars inside me. Because if not, then she would win in another way. Not by owning my love, but by owning the ruins of my heart. So I began again, slowly. I walked away from the places that smelled like her perfume. I erased numbers, burned letters, deleted memories, painful rituals, yes, but necessary ones. Not because I wanted to forget. Number forgetting is impossible, but because I wanted to remember without bleeding. I started rebuilding the man in the mirror, piece by broken piece. Stronger this time, sharper this time, but above all, wiser. Love had blinded me once. Betrayal had destroyed me once. That was my past, but it was not going to be my future. And somewhere in between the ashes of pain and the sparks of strength, I realized something. Love is not the enemy. Betrayal is not the end. Even revenge, as intoxicating as it feels, is not the answer. The answer is rebirth, to let the fire that killed you forge you. So now, when I tell my story, I don't tell it as a victim, not even as a victor. I tell it as a man who walked through love, through betrayal, through deceit and revenge, and still found a way to rise. Yes, I carry scars. Yes, I carry memories. But today, they no longer chain me. They crown me. Because the story of my life is not about the woman who betrayed me. It's about the man she unknowingly created. A man who turned heartbreak into fire. A man who turned fire into power. A man who rose from ashes, unbreakable. And this is my rebirth.